Good morning, beautiful Sunday people. I'm Jane Rago. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Savannah, working to build a diverse, multicultural, and beloved community. We celebrate the presence and participation of LGBTQI and straight people of all races, genders, abilities, and ethnic and national origins. We welcome you on Zoom and on site, whoever you know yourself to be and wherever you are on your journey. If you're visiting with us today and would like to introduce yourself, if you're on Zoom, go ahead and use the chat and I can read it out loud to the congregation. And if you're here in the pews, please rise and raise your hand as you're willing and able, and Martha will bring a microphone over. So are there any visitors on this side?
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Amy. I am David's sister and visiting with my wife from Oakland, California. I'm so happy to be here with you this morning.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Peter. Just coming through Savannah. I'm a member of the UU Church in St. Petersburg, Florida, and coming from Maryland back down to St. Petersburg where the winters are a little bit milder.
Welcome.
My name is Margie, and I am traveling with Peter, my friend. I belong to the UU Church in St. Pete. I've been a UU for 43 years last week. And happy to be here in this beautiful church with a choir. Love the choir.
Are there any other visitors on this side? Okay. Are there any visitors on this side of the room who'd like to introduce themselves?
Hi, I'm Maya. I live here in Savannah, and I'm Jane's friend.
Welcome.
I want to introduce my friend Marilyn Knight, who's a UU visiting from Indianapolis. Marilyn and I worked together and had our babies together over 40 years ago.
Wow. Welcome. Okay. And I don't see anybody on the Zoom chat. It's good to have you all with us. Please join us in the social hall after the service for refreshments. And you'll find the social hall in the next building by following the crowd through this door, through the main doors, or ask Martha. There are 2 cards in the pew back in front of you to help us gather information for the good of our community. Use the rainbow chalice card, and there's a QR code, or you can old-fashioned write it in your information, and that signs up for our newsletter, or to receive a welcome letter from our minister. Zoom visitors, I've put all this information into the chat, or you can contact our administrator as well. This card is to share a joy or sorrow with the red heart and chalice. Zoom participants, you may also type a joy or sorrow in on the chat, and we will read them aloud in the service if you wish. If you fill out either of these cards, please put them in the collection plate a little later this morning. We email church announcements to members and friends on Tuesdays and Fridays. Please check your email for complete details about the following. Next week, we'll meet in Troop Square for our annual Blessing of the Animals. Bring your folding chair and your pet on a leash or in a container, please, and or a photograph of your deceased pet, or in our case, our aggressive pet. And come help us plan our first auction since COVID. We are meeting on Friday the 13th in Ron Hall, and we will have bubbles and bites and brainstorming. Our first music mix concert of the season, Acoustic Office with Ricardo Ochoa, will be on Sunday, October 22nd. Tickets are available through Eventbrite, and see the October newsletter for details. With the lighting of our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, we enter into sacred time. Our chalice lighter this morning is Chris Carroll. For the memory that heals and holds, written by the Reverend Scott Taylor. As we gather this morning, let us be a people of not forgetting. Let us practice holding collective memories that might otherwise slip into that enormous void that sucks at and corrodes any future we hold dear. Let us practice honoring truth-telling, up from the past that must come fully into the now, lest we falter and fail, lest the whole remain in pieces. Let not our need for simplicity or comfort, for easy forgiveness or false pardon, smother the heartbreak that still needs healing. Let us practice resilience with reckoning. Let us marry memory and promise. Let us dance in the tension we find there. Let us rest in the integrity we cultivate there. Let us be partners with the possibility that emerges there. It is good we gather.
The place where we meet to seek the highest is holy ground. Let us worship together. As Jane said, our theme for October is heritage, and our hymn of the month is number 290, Bring, O Past, Your Honor. Please rise in body or in spirit. time now for our story. Anyone who would like to see the pictures may come forward. Our story this morning, you don't always get what you hope for. You don't always get everything you hope for. I know. Yesterday I woke up hoping to have toast and juice for breakfast. I like toast and juice. But instead, a tornado picked me up out of my bedroom and flew me to a castle on a tall mountain. It dropped me into a chair in the castle courtyard. When I caught my breath, I saw a king standing in front of me. "Eat this banana split," he ordered, "or I'll cut off your head." I ate the banana split. What else could I do? Then the king ordered, "Now take him back." Down whooshed the tornado. It picked me up and flew me home. Since I wasn't hungry anymore, I went to the bathroom to shower. I hoped the shower would be warm. But as I started to take off my shirt, a tidal wave roared through my house and swept me away. I rode the wave to the ocean. As I floundered in the wild water, I saw a rope dangling out of the water. I grabbed it and began to climb. Up I went and over the side of the ship it was hanging from. And then I saw them. Pirates. I hoped they wouldn't make me walk the plank. But they did. They blindfolded me, brought out the plank, and made me get on. I walked slowly forward. Then I heard a loud crack. The plank broke, and I fell into the water. I grabbed the broken plank just as a second tidal wave hit. I held on for my life as the wave rushed to the shore and dropped me right in my front yard. After a bath in the ocean, I didn't need a shower. I changed into some dry clothes and ran off to school. I hoped I wouldn't be late. But when I reached the place where school was supposed to be, it wasn't there. I looked all over. I couldn't see it. Then I looked up. There it was, floating in the air high above me. My school. It was above the trees, above the buildings, above everything. I jumped, I shouted, I even asked a passing seagull to take me up. Nothing worked. There was no way to go to school, so I gave up and went home. All the excitement of the morning had made me hungry again. I went to the kitchen. I hoped I'd find something good to snack on. But as I reached for the refrigerator handle, I heard a rumble underneath the refrigerator. Flames shot out, then the refrigerator began to rise. The refrigerator rocketed through the ceiling and into the sky. I watched it disappear into space. I went to the cupboards. I hoped there would be some crackers. As I reached for the cupboard door, however, the cupboards began to sink into the earth. Down dropped the cupboards. I looked into the hole until I saw a pinpoint of light where the cupboard had left the earth on the other side. Now I was hungrier than ever. I decided to go to Burgers R Us, 1 trillion served. I hoped I could get a cheeseburger and maybe a vanilla shake. But when I walked into Burgers R Us, it was empty. Well, almost empty. At the counter sat a monster. I turned to run. "Stop right there," said the monster, and he grabbed me with a long arm. "All those others might have gotten away, but you won't. I have come a zillion miles through space just to pick up some hamburgers, and you're going to make them for me." "But I don't work here," I said. "I want 1 trillion hamburgers to go. I want 999,999,999,999 with everything. And I want 1 with no pickles. You will make them, or I will take you home and we'll eat you instead." I began making hamburgers. All day long I worked, all night I worked, and all the next day and all the next night. For 12 days I cooked hamburgers, and all the time Monster sat there with his big teeth. Finally the burgers were done. 1 trillion. I hoped the monster would be happy. Then a spaceship landed and the monster carried the hamburgers into it. When he came back, he gave me a golf ball. "What's this for?" I asked. "Payment for the hamburgers," he said. "On my planet, 1 trillion hamburgers is worth 1 golf ball." Then he climbed back into his ship and took off into space. I changed the Burgers R Us sign, 2 trillion sold, and went home. When I walked in the door, my mom was waiting for me. "Where have you been?" she asked. I told her everything. I hoped she would understand, and I hoped she wouldn't be upset about the refrigerator. "I understand," she said. "Sometimes you just don't get everything you hope for. And don't worry about the refrigerator. It was old anyway. We'll get a new one tomorrow." Then she told me about the time she hoped she would get new socks for her birthday, and you wouldn't believe what happened. Thank you for listening. You may now go to Sunday school as we sing.
Part of our spiritual work here in building our beloved community is keeping the lights on, the floors clean, and our amazing staff paid. Giving is an act of generosity. We now gratefully accept your offerings. If you want to donate via debit or credit card, there is a QR code on the back of your order of service. You can also go to uusavannah.org and click the donate button. Mailed checks are welcome. And I dropped all of this information into the chat on Zoom, so it's just a one-click stop. And this is also a reminder, if you filled out either of these cards, to put them in the basket. Thank you. have several joys and sorrows today. Savannah lost a beloved local pastor this week, Clarence Teddy Williams. We hold our community in our heart. And please keep our very own RE extraordinaire teacher, Megan, in our hearts as well. She is really quite ill right now with COVID. And Don Nix says to pray for our government to not shut down and cause harm. Absolutely. We also have a joy. Abigail and Jordan Tyson Nost are celebrating their second wedding anniversary. And we have another joy from Judy Saucerman. My son Scott came from Atlanta to be with me to celebrate my birthday. Happy birthday. And Diane Hutter has a concern that Katie, age 12, had an emergency appendectomy, so we keep her in our hearts. Let us hold all of our joys and sorrows, spoken and unspoken, in our hearts as we join together in the responsive reading found in your order of service. Sorrow is everywhere. Yet joy is evermore. As we mourn together, so we celebrate together, and offer thanks that we are not alone. So may it be now and in all the days to come.
Let us continue in a spirit of meditation. How do we know who we are? What tells us and others that we are we and not someone else? Is it our genes handed on to us from generations of ancestors unknown? Is it our habits and mannerisms and turns of phrase absorbed as we grew up in family homes and extended family circles? Our regionalisms, our accents, our food preferences, shaped by the urban, suburban, or rural geographies of childhoods and young adulthoods? Or is it the decisions we make, the actions we take, the ways we deliberately set ourselves apart from ancestries, families, neighborhoods, regions? Perhaps the accidents that befall us, the actions we take, the accidents that befall us, illnesses, chance encounters, economic reversals, unearned good fortune, the people who cross our paths or enter our dreams, perhaps these stamp and mold and fire our being into being. A writer declares, "Something inside me knows who I am." Maybe that's enough. That's something inside us that knows who we are. Something born into the world with us, strengthened and refined in all the ways, mysterious and holy and eternal. Something we need only listen to, intently, curiously, regularly, to be reminded who we are, and that we are mysterious, eternal, holy. Amen. Our first reading this morning from my colleague Nathan Ryan, who serves our Unitarian Universalist Church in Baton Rouge. We have an absurd amount to learn or unlearn about race in this country. America allowed slavery to exist by seeking out personal and regional salvation at the expense of universal salvation. Our country felt better about itself because with the South as the identified patient, it never had to look at its own addiction. In the pre-emancipation South, most whites and almost all blacks were poor. Only a handful of plantation owners held the wealth. The North and many Unitarian-led cities spread their share of the stolen enslavement money, cotton, sugar, etc., into factories and production that, while partially benefiting the rich, supported the middle and working class white people. Much of our faith's amassed wealth came this way. Worse, our Unitarian forebears justified keeping this money by perpetuating the mythology that they were the good, anti-racist part of the country. And so in addition to having an absurd amount to learn or unlearn about race in this country, we also have an absurd amount to learn and unlearn about our faith's complacency in its racism. We as a faith have benefited and continue to benefit directly from a system that garners wealth and safety at the expense of Black people. So far, our faith has not done the work to unlearn the mythologies, the perpetual cultural supremacy in this country. Although many of the terms might make us uncomfortable, we must notice how mythologies that go wholly unexamined in our faith are in actuality perpetuating systems of oppression. We must dedicate ourselves to building a new system of radical universalist inclusion that loves all people. My second reading by Clint Smith also appeared in my newsletter column in October. When people say we have made it through worse before, all I hear is the wind slapping against the gravestones of those who did not make it, those who did not survive to see the confetti fall from the sky, those who did not live to watch the parade roll down the street. I have grown accustomed to a lifetime of aphorisms meant to assuage my fears, pithy sayings meant to convey that everything ends up fine in the end. There is no solace in rearranging language to make a different word tell the same lie. Sometimes the moral arc of the universe does not bend in a direction that will comfort us. Sometimes it bends in ways we don't expect, and there are people who fall off in the process. Please, dear reader, do not say I am hopeless. I believe there is a better future to fight for. I simply accept the possibility that I may not live to see it. I have grown weary of telling myself lies that I might one day begin to believe. We are not all left standing after the war has ended. Some of us have become ghosts by the time the dust has settled. And our final reading this morning by Amanda Gorman, we will hear from the poet herself.
Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens, but one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the west. We will rise from the wind-swept northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked south. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Here end our readings. Will you rise in spirit or in body for our hymn number 183, The Winds of Change Forever Blown?
Across the
That one's for the adult RE class. The Buy Nothing Facebook group I belong to mandates that all posts begin with either the word gift or the word wish. If you want to give something away, you label it gift. If you're looking for something, you label it wish. Most of us are pretty good about following the rules, and the moderators firmly remind us when we forget. Once in a while, however, another label shows up and the moderators don't protest: gift/burden. Sometimes gift/burdens are things that are broken or need a part, but the giver thinks someone in the group might be handy enough to fix, resourceful enough to find the part, or creative enough to repurpose in another form. Other times, the gift burden is something that is whole and in perfect working order and might be just the thing someone is looking for. But because the giver has found it to take up too much space, or be unwieldy, or require a lot of maintenance, or simply not worth the effort, they feel the need to warn potential recipients that it might be a gift, but it might also be a burden. Our Soul Matters theme for October, for the small groups and for worship, is the gift of heritage. The resource materials for the month fall into several categories, and some of them might more accurately be labeled gift burden. On the heritage of trauma, on the heritage of grief, on shaping what the heritage of AI will be, on what we should have learned from the heritage of book banning, on holding on to the hard parts of UU history, on facing our American heritage honestly. I asked the wrong question in my sermon title: is it a gift if we don't have a choice? Well, duh. That's sort of the definition of a gift most of the time. What I really wanted to ask, what my lizard brain, the part of me ruled by impulse, was screaming was trauma, grief, the history of book banning, the hard parts of our faith's history, the totality of our country's history. These are part of our collective history and experience, our heritage. Are they gifts? Well, my cortex replies, remember the Rolling Stones. We don't always get what we want, but if we try sometimes, we just might find we get what we need. And besides, my cortex continues, if we do what we've always done, then we'll get what we've always gotten. Or to sound more learned, in the words of either Edmund Burke or George Santayana or Winston Churchill, if we don't remember the past, we are destined, condemned, or doomed to repeat it. We may, and probably do, differ in our understanding of whether or not the difficult, shameful, hard parts of our faith's history or our country's history are gifts, whether the trauma or grief of our individual histories are gifts. But mental health professionals tell us that often examining, telling the truth about, grieving for, and raging at the trauma in an individual's or family's past is a way toward a more hopeful, productive, satisfying, and joy-filled future. That is to say, a gift. And I think many, though perhaps not all of us, will agree, however reluctantly, that the opportunity to examine, learn from, atone for, or grieve for, or rage at the difficult, shameful, brutal, hard parts of our faiths and our country's history, and then, having done that, plot a new, more just, expansive, and inclusive path forward, this opportunity, arduous as it is a gift. The gift for our country and for our faith lies in acknowledging, along with the poet, that being American is more than a pride we inherit, it's a past we step into, and in taking active and deliberate part in how we repair it. If freeing ourselves from the destiny of repeating the past means remembering without being either swamped or frozen by it, but rather released into deliberate and prayerful repair of ongoing damage, then holding on to the hard parts of UU history, facing our American heritage honestly, are indeed gifts. Now, it's not mere happenstance that the Soul Matters folks suggest both UU history and US history as fruitful areas for exploring the gift of heritage. For one thing, Unitarian Universalist history is deeply entwined with US history, specifically in that significant individuals in the early decades of our country were either Unitarian or Universalist, and more generally, in that Unitarianism, Universalism, and Unitarian Universalism grew up in this country, developing as institutions as the country developed as a nation. Yes, Unitarian theology and Universalist theology predate the United States by many, many years and came into being in Europe, and Unitarianism as an organized religion also took hold in England around the same time it was becoming established here. Nevertheless, institutionally and theologically, Unitarian Universalism as we know it today in the United States is a pretty American tradition. Secondly, though we would like it to be otherwise, as the piece from Nathan Ryan points out, but barely scratches the surface of, because it grew up on this soil, in this country, our faith's involvement in our country's history of racial violence, oppression, and injustice is part of our heritage we need to examine honestly, the lingering effect of which we need to continue to reckon with today. As the larger US society prefers stories of times and in situations in which we did the right thing with regard to race and equality over accounts of the times and situations in which laws, traditions, unexamined habits, and behaviors caused and still cause harm to Black, Indigenous, and people of color, individuals, families, and communities, so too with Unitarian Universalists. We tell stories of Unitarian abolitionists at the time of the Civil War, but not stories of the Unitarians who favored a more gradual approach to the discontinuation of enslavement, nor of the Unitarians who profited directly or indirectly from it. We tell stories of the Unitarian Universalist Association Board of Trustees adjourning its meeting so that members could answer the call to travel to Selma after the first bloody and unsuccessful attempt to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge. We tell stories of those Unitarian Universalists who were beaten and killed in and around Selma and elsewhere during the Civil Rights era, but we don't tell stories of the Unitarian Universalist and Unitarian Universalist congregations that refused and sometimes still refuse to call or hire religious professionals of color. Not of the teens and young adults of color subjected still to discrimination, bullying, and exclusion at Unitarian Universalist events and in UU spaces. We'd rather hear the young Black female poet proclaim, "There is always light if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it," than to hear the young Black male poet proclaim, "Some of us have become ghosts by the time the dust has settled." But both are true. Both describe the reality and the possibility of our country and our faith. Finally, it makes sense that Soul Matters would suggest both UU history and U.S. history as fruitful areas for exploration, because among Unitarian Universalists, as among U.S. citizens as a whole, there is not inconsiderable resistance to calls to examine our past and our present in order that our future might be more just, loving, inclusive country or faith, a facade of which we present today. Some voices argue that teaching accurate accounts of racism and oppression in U.S. history or literature or any part of a curriculum from kindergarten to college amounts to woke shaming of white children, making them feel bad about themselves for things that happened decades or more before they were born. Similarly, voices within Unitarian Universalism argue that attention to systemic racism in our history and in our current day association and congregations is a superfluous shaming effort imposed by a woke hierarchy. In her book, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent, Isabel Wilkerson offers two metaphors that cast such examination of our roots in positive, constructive light. She writes, "I love old houses. I've always lived in old houses, but old houses need a lot of work. The work is never done. Just when you think you've finished one renovation, it's time to do something else. Something else has gone wrong. That's what our country is like. You may not want to go into that basement, but if you don't go into that basement, it's at your own peril. Whatever you are ignoring is not going to go away. Whatever you're ignoring is only going to get worse. Whatever you're ignoring will be there to be reckoned with until you reckon with it. And I think that's what we're called upon to do where we are right now." And she writes, "We in the developed world are like homeowners who inherited a house on a piece of land that is beautiful on the outside, but whose soil is unstable loam and rock, heaving and contracting over generations, cracks patched, but the deeper ruptures waved away for decades, centuries even. Many people rightly say, I had nothing to do with how all this started. I had nothing to do with the sins of the past. My ancestors never attacked indigenous people, never owned slaves. And yes, not one of us was here when this house was built. Our immediate ancestors may have had nothing to do with it, but here we are, the current occupants of a property with stress cracks and bowed walls and fissures built into the foundations. We are heirs to whatever is right or wrong with it. We did not erect the uneven pillars or joists, but they are ours to deal with now, and any further deterioration is in fact on our hands." Isabel Wilkerson. There is nothing inherently shameful in having a history with some rot in it, but ignoring the rot is surely deleterious to our future. The gift of an honest reckoning with the heritage of UU history and or the history of the United States is the chance to prevent further deterioration. The opportunity, as I said earlier, to start on the path to becoming who we'd like to be, who we like to believe we already are. 2, in the words of our next hymn, speed onward the years when another age advances, seers foretold in ancient song, when weapons of oppression gather dust. Another age when our professed welcome and inclusion deepen into barrier-free participation and leadership for Black, Indigenous, people of color in all segments of our society and our congregations, bringing blessings down upon us all. Our Social Justice Committee, which met last week, and our Anti-Racism Committee are great resources if you're wondering where to get started or how to continue unwrapping the gift of our UU or US heritage. I can offer some resources from my library as well, particularly about race and Unitarian Universalism. For myself, I'm going to start with Jingle Bells, or rather with the Pierpont brothers and their father, to familiarize myself with their array of views of enslavement and our legacy as a church once pastored by John Pierpont Jr. I already wonder each time I walk by the sign in Troop Square or listen to the trolleys full of tourists singing Jingle Bells, what it means for us and about us that that song and its composer is one of the things for which we are known. I expect my study will increase my discomfort. But the eventual gift will be a deeper knowledge and understanding of the history and therefore the present and the future of this beloved congregation I currently serve. A gift, it turns out, that I am choosing, and that is also probably what I need. Amen. So the choir practiced our next hymn and came across a word they neither knew the meaning of which nor the pronunciation. Falchion. It's pronounced falchion, and it's a broad, slightly curved sword with the cutting edge on the convex side. So now you'll know what you're singing. Please rise in body or spirit for hymn number 166. The years are coming. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon the day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream. Amen.